Welcome to Collecting Chaos. It's experiment day. I'm gonna try some experiments. I'm gonna try 3 different things that you might find around your house. Maybe you don't have distilled water around your house, but that's one of the items I'm going to be using. And we're going to compare them and see if they can do anything about cleaning the dirt off a comic. And I have a comic. It's pretty dirty. We're just going to work on some of the back. As you can see, it's got a lot of dirt on it. I'll show you the front of it later after I ruin it. But it's got water stains on it now, and it's good. It's in low good, so it's not a big deal if I ruin it. But before we get started on that, I got something else I want to show you, and that's why this is here. And if you want to see all of that stuff and see how I use a semi-scientific method to determine how these cleaners and other stuff work, keep watching. I figured I'd start with this. It's been about a year, a little less. It's been about 11 months actually since I put this out. Now, if you remember, I updated you about 5 or 6 months ago and showed you the top portion and how it had faded using a poly bag to protect it. And now we're going to take a look at it after it's been sitting in the exact same place for about 5 or 6 months, using Mylar to protect it. Now this is a 4mm Mylar, Mylite sheet, and as you can see, I think this was up there for 6 months, so it's a little more faded than this one down here. But both show a lot of discoloration. This strip right here was always covered, so it was never exposed. But as you can see, the Mylar did not give it any better protection than the poly bag. If you want to display your comics, don't display them in poly bags, don't display them in Mylar. Find a better way. Right now, to my knowledge, the best protection you're going to get against UV radiation is either the CBCS or the CGC hard cases, the slabs. Not that I want to promote slabs, because I don't use them myself. Well, I've got a few comics in slabs because that's the way I bought them. But no, if you want to display your comic, the absolute best way to do it is to scan the cover, print out a color copy, frame it, hang it on the wall. You know you've got that comic. It's a no-brainer to me. So anyway, this is how it looks, and maybe I'll give this comic away at some point in time, if anybody would want it, as a maybe when I hit 200 subscribers, I'll give them this comic and maybe something else. I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. Maybe I'll never give anything away. We'll cross that bridge when I get a little closer to it, or when I actually come to it. But yeah, that's how that turned out. That experiment, it was very informative. Mylar is no better than a poly bag when it comes to UV protection. Neither one of them provide any protection, really. Now, on to the fun stuff. This is the comic that I plan on experimenting on. Now, I'm purposely putting it here on this. These 2 inches, I'm going to use distilled water. These 2 inches, I'm going to use Windex. And these 2 inches, well, actually, we'll do it this way. 2 inches, it's something just about everybody has in their house. Mouthwash, Windex, which most people have, distilled water. And I'll just leave this 1 inch untreated. Now, in order to make this a little more scientific, I'm going to use pads. I'm going to use these my cotton round pads, and I'm going to use an eyedropper and put 3 drops of each liquid on the pad before I use it. That way I'm using the exact same amount each time. Everything is at room temperature. I have not heated the water. I haven't done anything to it. It's just room temperature. And that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the water. One, two, three. And the way we're going to determine if it works is by how much dirt we see on the pad. Doesn't look like a whole lot, but it is getting the comic a little damp. Yeah, there's a little dirt showing up on the pad, so it is working some. I will use the back side of the pad to blot it off because I don't want it to dry on there. Matter of fact, we're going to take this poly bag, put it inside, now next, Windex. Well, glass cleaner. Windex, same thing, right? Almost. This is actually Windex. And I have a little cap here that I will clean out. Spray a little bit in there so that I can get it out with my... This is the one I used for water. This is the one I'm using for the Windex. Scientific method. You use different things for different materials. At least that's the way I think it is. And 1, 2, 3, oops, 4 drops by accident. Hopefully it won't make that much difference. It's getting it a lot wetter a lot quicker. Use the back side of it to blot it out. That ammonia really went to the paper quick. And let's compare. I don't see much difference. Oh, this side, that's, yeah. I don't think it did a whole lot. Use a fresh pad to blot that off. And I'm going to do this a couple of times. Now for another fresh one for use with the mouthwash. And there were 4 drops on that one too. So the same amount of this as for Windex. And blot it off. Personally, I don't think any of these are going to do anything. They might stain the comic, but I don't think it's going to clean it at all. Hoping I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And it did soak all the way through. That's interesting. The water didn't soak all the way through like the other two did. And I'm sure you've noticed that it's a Jimmy Olsen comic. So I'll go ahead and show you the front cover. It's, I believe, from 1968. 1966, Jimmy Olsen number 93. And it's got a rusted staple. And like I said, it's in pretty rough shape, so I don't mind experimenting on it. I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to give it a quick press, come back, and repeat. So I'll be back in a little bit. And we're back. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Bring this down some. And there's not a whole lot of difference, but we're going to go through the second run on that. And I'm going to do 4 drops because that's what I ended up with on most of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is just water, distilled water. And on this part, I've decided I'm going to go ahead and use an eraser, and we'll compare that too. So here we go. Got a little dirt off of it, it looks like. I'm going to blot that water off. And it probably wouldn't hurt to let it sit for a little while. Next, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is the glass cleaner. Now when I put this in the press, I only had it at about 125 degrees. And it got some off. It got some dirt off, it looks like. Not a lot, but it did get some. Then the water got a little bit too. Blot that off. And finally, the one that I really don't think is going to do anything. Actually, I'd be surprised if any of them did anything. This is the mouthwash. And we'll blot that. Actually, it looks like the mouthwash took off the most dirt just now. That's interesting. You can see a little bit of dirt there, little tiny bit of dirt there, and very faint amount of dirt there. So it looks like the mouthwash actually is cleaning some of the dirt off. Go figure. Now I'm going to blot the inside, because that stuff, especially the mouthwash, it just goes right through the paper. And where's my... Yeah, what'd my cat do with the eraser? He's been up on my table again messing with things. Ah, there it is. And this inch, I'm just going to very lightly hit it with an eraser, see what happens. I'm not pressing down at all. I'm just running the eraser over. As a matter of fact, if you see it, this is basically the way I'm doing it. There's nothing. The weight of the eraser is what is pressing down on the paper. I'm not putting any pressure other than what's already, other than the weight of the eraser itself. Okay, let that dry a little bit, put it back in the press, and come back and see what happens. And we're back. Start with the eraser, do this 1-inch section over here, see if it's going to make any difference. And it appears to be taking a little bit of dirt off. And now do the round of the... And I think this is going to be the last one. I don't see that much difference. I don't see that it's really doing much of anything at all, which is not surprising to me. It's about what I expected. So, start with the water. 1, 2, 3, 4. And blot it off. Actually, you know what? I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes. I'll blot them all off at once. So that's the water, and it took a little more off, not much. And now we'll do one, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it snuck in an extra one on me. The glass cleaner. And finally, the mouthwash. Let me get this in focus and you can see what it did. As you can see, it took a little bit of dirt off. So it is actually working a little bit. And here's the glass cleaner. And that took a little bit more off. And finally, the water, and it didn't take hardly anything off. And I'm going to blot it. Get off any excess. And we're going to let that dry a little bit. Then I'm going to put it in the press. Then I'll be back for my conclusions. And I'm back. And here are my conclusions. None of the things I used today really did anything. Of the three, I think the water actually worked the best. Even though if you go by the pads, the Windex or window cleaner took off the most amount of dirt. If you look on the inside, the water actually got a little bit whiter over here than the rest of them did. So I don't think any of those are appropriate for cleaning. Well, yes, they are, but not for comics. The water is a good way to take out stains, but it takes a long time, very long process, very time consuming. Now, like I said, my conclusion is none of them are worth using for a comic book, to clean a comic book. Great for cleaning porcelain, great for cleaning your teeth, wonderful for doing other things with, but not for cleaning comics. Thought for the day: if you are going to go down this rabbit hole and try to clean comics, you have to expect that you're going to ruin a few. Now, I was lucky in that this one is in such a low grade already that I didn't really hurt it at all. It's still the same grade, despite possibly having a few water stains on it that didn't have before. You know, there's a slight edge stain here that I don't remember, but that could have been on there before. I just don't remember it. Of course, it has a rusty staple there. I would really, and that staple feels to me like it's going to fall apart. And I have had comics where the staple just disintegrates. What I would love to do is find a wire, a steel wire that gauge, that I could make staples with. And I would replace rusty staples with it and just take the heat. Because you're not going to replace on a staple on, you know, a near mint comic. You're going to do it on one that's low grade, that's got rust on it, that's, you know, falling apart already. And it's not a big deal when you replace the staples on those, as long as you use a similar gauge wire or a vintage staple from a comic of the same year, preferably of the same publisher. So, yeah. Expect to make mistakes. Expect to ruin a few comics. And if anyone says, well, they've been cleaning comics for years and I've never ruined a comic, yeah, to me, they're either not learning anything, lying, or they've been really, really lucky. And I'm going to assume that they've just been really, really lucky. Because I'd hate to think that they're not learning anything, or they're not, or that they're lying. Having all that said, I'm about finished with this video, so make sure you wash your hands before handling your comics and collectibles. It's good for your comics and collectibles. It's good for your health. And we'll see you next video. Bye.